Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the leadership team tools and reports within BNI Connect. What we're going to be talking about today is a lot of the things that most leadership team members have access to in the system for doing their day-to-day and week-to-week activities in BNI. Things like entering the POMS report, or going back to correct a POMS report, or entering the speaker rotation, or entering mentors and mentees and all of those functions, as well as going in and checking out the statistics and the POMS report statistics, as well as the who has signed up for an event or who has attended the MSP. All of these things are within BNI Connect and are just a couple of clicks away, so we're going to be going through most of those activities. One thing to keep in mind is that as I'm going through the activities today, I won't be saying, well, this is the vice president's job, or this is the secretary treasurer's job, or this is the visitor host's job. And that's because when it comes to BNI Connect, it's very flexible, that regions can really go through and assign different tasks to different people depending on how they do things in their region. For example, I know that in most regions around the world, the weekly entering of the POMS report is done by the vice president. That being said, there are a number of regions, and some very successful regions as well, where some of the chapters are so big that in order to keep the vice president sane, they've delegated the activity of entering the POMS report to other members of the chapter. That's all very possible to do with just about any of the functionality and the weekly activities in BNI Connect. So this isn't specifically a president's training or a vice president's training or a membership committee training. We're going to take a look at all of the things that you have access to. The other reason for this is that the permissions in BNI Connect generally are set up as a default anyway, so that you guys on the leadership team can back each other up. So if the vice president is on vacation with their family for 2 weeks, they send a substitute, so that's all good. But so that the POMS reports don't get backed up, the president can always jump in and submit those POMS report, or the secretary treasurer could do that. So I find it's good that everybody in the leadership team knows all of the ways that the other people can help out. All right, so a couple of housekeeping things before we get started with the actual material. That is that this is a live webinar, so if you have questions as we are going through the material today, please do feel free to ask me those questions. The best way to ask questions, as Tony's already started doing, is to type those questions into the question control panel, and I'll see those pop up on the screen, and I will try to answer them as we are going through the material today. We are scheduled for about 30 minutes worth of content, so the stuff I have to show you will take about 30 minutes. I try to be very respectful of people's time so that they can get back to their busy lives and jobs and still take back a good chunk of information with them. That being said, if you do have questions, I will always stay on these webinars until every single question is answered. So please do feel free to ask as many questions as you want to, and if you have the extra time to hang out with me to answer all those questions, I am happy to do so. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, so that means that you can always go back and review this webinar at a later time. It'll be available in 2 different places. The first place is going to be on the support site. So if you click on this question mark in the upper right-hand corner, that will take you to the support site, support.bniconnect.com. You'll see our list of webinars. Our March series of webinars will be up there shortly, hopefully tomorrow. And if you scroll down to chapter training and documentation, you'll see all different help articles on stuff that we can do in BNI Connect. And you'll also see recorded webinars. So the ones for February 2015 are all posted here. And they've all been uploaded already. And the one from yesterday and the one from today will be up very shortly. So please do check in there. You can also go directly to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. We have tons of videos and materials up there, including all of our educational moments, which are short 3 to 5 minute videos on just very specific topics. as well as all of the various monthly series of webinars and some special things from Dr. Meisner about BNI Connect, release announcements, all sorts of stuff. So please do subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can check out all of our videos at your leisure. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the leadership team tools and reports. Now, as you guys know, the front page of BNI Connect, as soon as you log in, that's what members are going to use on a daily basis, hopefully, to do all of the recording of their activities, submitting thank you for closed business slips, referral slips, one-to-one slips, etc., hopefully in real time as that's happening, because as we all know, submitting a slip here on BNI Connect means that the person can do the follow-up for that referral right away. There's not that lag of a time period of just waiting for the weekly meeting to be able to pass that referral information. The other person will get it right away. If your chapter is just starting to do the online slips or has been on board with the online slips, a couple of troubleshooting things. A lot of times at the chapter level and at the director level, you will get people will say, well, I submitted it online. How come I don't have credit for it yet? How come it's not showing up in the POMS report? One thing that you want to make sure that people do is that when they submit a slip in BNI Connect, for example, after today's webinar, go into the CEU slips and make sure that you submit a slip for a BNI webinar. As soon as that slip is submitted, it will immediately appear in their Review My Slips. So if I go to Review My Slips, my CEU slips here, the slip that I just submitted, just this second on 2/26, is now in draft mode. It is now waiting for next week's chapter meeting. Only after the chapter meeting will these numbers up here change. These numbers are the official POMS reports. So my CEUs did not increment yet. They will increment after the POMS is submitted on a weekly basis. So that's very important to know when members get kind of confused about that. Make sure that to make sure it's submitted, have them check their Review My Slips report. And if it's there, it'll be there when you do your weekly submission. The other thing that you'll run into a lot in the leadership team is people saying that their numbers just aren't correct. So I didn't have 2 absences, or I didn't have, I had 5 referrals, not 4 referrals. That's always been kind of hard to troubleshoot because you never really know when they missed that referral or when they were absent. There's a particular tool in BNI Connect that makes it very easy to troubleshoot where the error is, and that is this personal participation report here. Every member can pull this personal participation report for themselves. When they do this, it will show them 1 year's worth of activity, and it makes it very easy for them to pinpoint exactly which week has the error. This is the POMS entry week after week after week after week, and all of the individual stats. So I can see here I have 2 absences in the past year. Shame on me. I can go back and look at when was that absence. I see that absent was on November 6, 2014. I could have sworn I sent a sub that day. Maybe the sub didn't show up, and I could either make that correction with the vice president, or I could let it go, and I can see that I really was absent that day. But having the members either print this out and show you where the error is, or you can also run this report for any member of your chapter under the reports. We have a couple of comments. Carla says, I'm not able to hear you. I tested my speakers and they work. Is anybody else having a problem with the sound? Carla, if it's not working, the only other suggestion I have is to possibly try to call in and use the telephone headset, or there is under the audio panel, it'll ask whether you're using a telephone or a mic and speakers, in which case you can, good. So you did call in with the telephone? Excellent. We also have a question from Ken. Ken says, we've never tracked CEUs in Canada, never heard of them before the webinars. Yet the CEUs are a relatively new thing in BNI, generally speaking, as far as things go in BNI. They have been around for a couple of years now in the United States, pioneered by Tom Fleming mostly in the Florida regions. But we have been using them for a little while, and they're slowly starting to catch on through the rest of the world as well. So, all right, so that's some important things. Any questions on the online slips and how it affects it? Now, for you that are on the leadership team, I would highly recommend getting your chapter on board with the online slips. And one of the reasons for that, if you've ever been the person that has to do the data entry, you know that it takes a long time to do because you have to sort out all the paper slips. You have to count them. You have to, put them into appropriate columns and everything. If you can get your entire chapter to be on board with filling out the slips online in BNI Connect, all you'll have to do is take attendance at the weekly meeting. All the rest of the information is entered into the POMS report for you. So let's take a look at how you do that. To get beyond this home page, we do have to go into the menu items. And the menu items are up here along the top. You can see we have network operations, reports, tools, and admin. Network is always going to be all of the social media components, so the connections and the groups and things like that. Where you're going to be living most of the time is operations and reports. Operations is input, reports is output. Reports is always going to be read only. If you're looking for tools and the ability to create things or make pairs or do data entry, you're always going to be looking under operations. So let's go to operations. We're going to go to the chapter level operations. And from here, you can see that we have a bunch of different menu items on the left-hand side. We have visitor management, meeting management, membership management, goals, the mentoring program, email management, and news. So we're going to go through a couple of these today. We're not going to go through all of them. We do only have another 18 minutes or so. But some of the important things that are good for leadership teams to know. So the first place I want to go to real quickly is the create email function. And this one is a great function, especially for leadership teams. If you ever have to send out an email to your chapter, this is the easiest way to do it. I've been in BNI for a long time, and I've been on leadership teams for a long time. Before BNI Connect, if I needed to send an email to my entire chapter, it was kind of a pain in the neck. I would have to go and usually go into my inbox and look for the last group email and then hit reply all, hoping that everybody got it, because there's always new members that come in that weren't on that list, and there was people that have left since then that shouldn't be getting the email. So all I need to do is click on email my chapter. I will get a list of all of the emails for the current membership, the current roster of my chapter. I just highlight it, hit copy, bring up my own email program. I recommend putting everything in the BCC line, type in a subject, type out my message, and hit send. Now I can be assured that all the right people will get that message. Makes it very easy to do. No more hunting and pecking and searching. You can also use, there's another great tool in here that's available both for members and for leadership teams, and that is the ability to email a visitor invitation. A lot of times members in the chapters struggle with what to say to invite people. Either they're shy and they can't adequately explain BNI, or they have the opposite problem. We're so excited about BNI that we end up spewing way too much information about BNI on an unsuspecting person. So the visitor invitation makes it very, very easy to say just the right amount of things to invite somebody to a chapter. You just need to fill out a couple of things. Let's say I'm going to invite Tony Wolf to my chapter meeting. Company name and email address. Now I'm going to use my own email address here so that you guys can see what this looks like. A very brief personal message. Oops. Great meeting you at the chamber event. I would love to introduce you to my networking team, or about my referral team. I hit send. It's going to take this information. It's going to compress it into this template that we have set up in the back end of BNI Connect. And it's going to immediately send out an email. So we can see here, Dear Tony, it was great meeting you at the chamber event, exactly what I typed in. Has a nice branded BNI logo up at the top. It then puts in all of the details about my chapter. So this one happens to be the Burr chapter up in Antarctica, what time we meet, where we meet. I don't have to look up the address. It puts it all in there. It also explains a very little bit about BNI, just enough, as well as the fact that we're looking for somebody from their profession and to please respond to this and RSVP. So that's the email functionality. Now let's look at some of the daily and everyday things that we're going to be doing at the chapter meeting, one of which is with managing of visitors. Managing visitors is an important part because it does help you as a leadership team to go back and review your visitors. It gives people credit in the POMS report for inviting visitors. It also follows up with visitors and makes sure that they're registered to be at the meetings. In addition, when you're building a visitor database, you can always go back to that visitor database to re-invite. How many times have you had a visitor's day, maybe had 30, 40, 50 visitors at the meeting, and then you never follow up with them again? You know, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people put in an application, or maybe 10 people put an application in, but those other 30 people that showed up, why not invite them back again to the chapter? Well, you can only do that if you're capturing their information. Now, this is a 2-step process. The first step is that if somebody says they're going to come to the meeting, you want to make sure that you pre-register them for a chapter meeting. And we do that under Manage Registered Visitors, or Manage Visitors, and then Register a Prospective Visitor. Note that it says before a meeting. So Tony Wolf just responded back in the chat window. He said, yeah, I'll be there, I'll be there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and register him for next week's meeting. So I just need to fill out this quick form here. So Tony Wolf, and you can fill out as much information as you have. Phone number is mandatory, as is email address. And I'm going to, again, use my own email address here so you can see what the reservation looks like. Oops, what date is he going to be visiting? He's going to be traveling to Antarctica next week, so he'll be there on March 4th. So now, Tony is registered for that meeting. So we can go ahead and he'll get the invitation for that. Now, after he visits, we want to make sure that we mark him as having attended that meeting. So once we do that, the important thing is that, let me make sure I have the right chapter here. Hey, where did Tony? Oh, hold on a second. Let me put his name in here. Tony, and here's his registration. Let's say that next week's meeting happens, or he showed up a week early this week. I can go in and mark him as attended. Now, what's great about this is it does send him a thank you email. And when we mark in who invited him to the meeting, that person would get credit for it in the POMS report. If somebody didn't pre-register, you can make sure that you click the Add a Visitor button as well to just register somebody or mark somebody as attended a meeting that hadn't pre-registered. So Ken says that this seems to be a repeat of some other stuff, and yes, there are some of these topics that we've covered in a couple of other of these webinars, but I'm about to show you some stuff that we didn't cover because some of the things apply to both members and to other people. So, and by the way, here's the registration email that confirmed Tony's visit, as well as the thank you email for visiting. The next thing we want to do is let's talk about what happens after a chapter meeting. So after a chapter meeting, we went ahead, we entered the visitors that went that week. Somebody needs to enter the statistics or the POMS report for that meeting. Again, usually it's the vice president, but it can be somebody else as well. So let's take a look at how we do that. So we're going to do that by going to Operations Chapter. We're going to go to Meeting Management. And here we have three options. You see we have the View POMs, the Enter POMs, and the View Edit Speakers. The View POM summary allows us to look at any single POMs report or any series of POMs report. So this is really helpful. If I click on View POM Summary, I can choose a date range, and I can go back as far in time as I'd like to. And I can look at all of the POMs reports that have been entered during that period. Now I can see that I should be having one per week, but my vice president up in the Antarctica region is kind of a slacker, hasn't been putting them in every week, so we're going to have to catch up with that. If I'd like to look at any of these POMs reports, I could click on the word status on like draft or completed here. For example, this one looks like it was partially entered. It's in a draft mode. So I could click on draft. That will bring me into the report. And from here, I can see the details of the report. If I need to go ahead and make some changes to this because it's still draft, I can click on Edit POMs. Before I edit the POMs, I'm seeing that we had a visitor that was invited by me. Do I want to accept this as a visitor? So I do get to make the decision whether or not Jeremy will get the credit for inviting that visitor. If I want to give them credit in the POMs report, I say yes. If I don't want to give them credit, let's say it was their second visit or they're not an eligible visitor, I could say no. Once you've cleared out the visitors, it will allow you to go in and edit or enter a POMs report. From here, this is where if you are using the online slips, this process is very, very easy because all of the POMs will be filled out for you with all that information. If you'd like to see which slips have been entered for that particular week, just click on Slips Audit Report. That will show you all of the online activity. And here we can just see that there was one automatically entered thing, and that was the visitor for Joe Slow, which was done on a previous webinar. Filling out the POMs report is as easy as filling out a spreadsheet. So it's just a matter of if you have slips for, let's say that Albert Camus had a referral given and the referral recipient was Alfred E. Newman, that would be a one referral given for Albert and one referral received for Alfred. You know, Mike Jones had a one-to-one with Jamie Jones, so they both got a 1 there. Harvey Keitel was thanked for $5,000 worth of business. Becky brought a visitor that wasn't registered. And Mr. Jones had 10 CEUs that week. So once you fill this all out, you can go ahead and submit this POMs report. Your other options here are mark as holiday, save as draft, or discard. So submitting the POMs will finalize this report. Once you finalize the report, it will all be officially part of the statistics. So in the summary POMs and things like that, marking as holiday means you didn't meet that week, and you're basically going to skip this meeting. If there were any online slips that were entered, they will go to next week's meeting. Save as draft means that you want to continue this progress later and come back to it, but not fully submit it yet. And if you want to just throw everything away and start over again, choose discard POMs. Keep in mind that online slips will come back. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this, and it will now be official. Carol says, where did I click on Edit POMs? So Edit POMs will show up. I'm going to go back to here. So this is the View POM Summary. And if I view a series of POMs, if I click on the word completed or draft, that will bring me into that week's meeting. So if I need to make a change, for example, I click on completed. And from here, I would first have to unlock the POMs report, which would then allow me to go in and edit it. If the report isn't in the list in like a draft mode or anything like that, for example, if I wanted to enter a POMS report for this week, the week of February 26th, I could click on Enter POMS, choose the meeting date for this week from the 25th, and it would start a new blank sheet for me. So does that help, Carol? You can also, if you need to enter a POMS report, you can also go to Meeting Management, and rather than go to View, you can go to Enter. The next thing that you will be doing on a weekly basis, or probably not on a weekly basis, but you want to make sure that you schedule your speakers in BNI Connect. And it's a pretty fairly easy process. You go to Meeting Management and View Edit Speakers. You can view your current speaker rotation by clicking, putting a date in to see the history of speakers or to see the speakers that are currently scheduled. I can see that in this chapter here. I have speakers scheduled out through the 18th of March here. If I'd like to assign another speaker, I could just click the button for Assign Speaker. I choose what date they'll be speaking. You can only choose future dates. So I'm going to put somebody in for the 25th. I choose the person from my list here and what their topic is going to be. Once I click Submit, they will be now listed in the list of speakers. They also show up on the chapter website. So if I go to, for example, my chapter website, you'll see that our next month of speakers is listed on our chapter website. So that's one more visibility, one more place that they are appearing out on the internet there, which is, again, great for people's visibility. It will also send a reminder to the 10-minute presenter 6 days and 3 days before the meeting. And the last thing I'm going to show you under operations here is the mentoring program. We do have a whole webinar on managing goals, and managing news is a whole different concept, so we're going to not talk about that today, but under the mentoring program, one of the best ways to increase a member's retention is to make sure that they get started off on the right foot. And one way to do that is to pair them up with a seasoned member in the chapter. What the mentoring program does is it starts an email campaign for them. And depending on how your region has it set up, it's anywhere from 6 to 8 or 9 weeks worth of weekly meetings between the mentor and the mentee. This sends them out an email every week and says, okay, this week you should be talking about this. This week you should be discussing this. So it keeps them on task and on focus. The way to do this is you can view who's currently assigned under View Mentor Mentee, or you can click on Assign Mentor Mentee to set up a pair. So you choose the date that they're going to start receiving the emails. Again, this can only be in the future. So let's say I'd like them to start getting emails on Monday, and I would choose my 2 members. So the mentor is going to be Marky Mark, and the mentee is going to be Art Garfunkel. So Marky Mark has some things to teach Mr. Garfunkel. We're going to click Submit, and now the 2 of them will start receiving those emails. All right, any questions on these operations real quick? And then I'm going to show you about, I know we're right at the bottom of the hour now, but I'm going to show you about a half a dozen reports that I think are very important from a leadership team standpoint. Well, Carol says, I am going a little fast, but you can always go back to the recording as well as the recordings of other sessions that I've done as well. All right, so let's take a look at some reports. Again, we're going to go to Reports to view a lot of the output reports. I'm going to show you just a couple of my favorite leadership team level reports that are important to various members of the leadership team. The very first one here is the member training report. Now, as usually a secretary treasurer or somebody on the membership committee, one of the policies or recommendations in BNI is that a person can't give their 10-minute presentation until they've taken a member success program. One of the ways that you can monitor who's taken the member success program is using this member training report. So I could always go to this member training report. And one of the great things about this report is that you can choose a show not attended option, which is kind of a reverse report, not who's been to the training, but who hasn't taken the training. So I'm going to go ahead and do the show not attended and choose the member success program. So when I do that, I can see all of these members in my BRR chapter that have not yet taken the member success program. So that's very helpful when I'm going to schedule my 10-minute presentations. The next report on the list, the first kind of 4 or 5 reports are important ones. The roster report. This one's a fairly obvious report. Obviously, it gives you the people in your chapter and the number of members and things like that. But more importantly, this is where you can check to make sure that people have the correct assignments. So if you're on the leadership team and you have a supporting cast of membership committee and event coordinators and educational coordinators, this is where you can look to make sure that they are properly assigned to those positions. Also, if you need to get in touch with your director consultant or your area director consultant, this is where you can look up who it is if you're not sure who it is, and their phone number will also be listed so you can get in touch with them. The membership dues report. This one is great for membership committees and the secretary treasurer. This way you know when people are up for renewal. That's important, of course, because you do need to be reviewing people's memberships when they're submitting their renewal application. It's also good to look a little further ahead. A lot of people, it's good to follow up with them 6 months before their renewal date. That way you have a chance to actually do some corrective action if they might be struggling in the chapter. So don't just look for the people that are due in bold next month, but look a couple of months out and check with those people. I might want to check with, with Jamie and Thea here to see how they're doing. Karen says, if a person is transferring from another chapter, do they take the member success if it is less than 1 year? Karen, that is going to completely be a regional decision on whether that is required. So some chapters, some regions require it within, certain amount of time. Every time you join a new chapter, it's more of a lifetime thing, but definitely check with your director consultant or your executive director on that. All right, I'm going to skip down a few here. The summary POMS report, and that is the bread and butter of the statistics for your chapter. The thing that I want to keep in mind, is that you can use any date range you want to. I mean, I could go back here. I could go back to 2004 or even further back in time if I wanted to and look at the entire statistics for my entire chapter for all of time. If I choose to include drop members, it'll list all of the members in their individual statistics. If I don't, it will still have the totals, but it won't list everybody, just the current members. So Ken asks, he says, my sound is fading in and out a little bit. Michael said that as well. Actually, what I think is happening is I have been fighting with laryngitis for the past month or so. And it's causing my physical voice to fade in and out a little bit. So I'm hoping to get word back from the doctor to find out if that is going to go away very soon. So apologize for that. All right, so again, this is also a great report to export out if you need to. So you can export or export without headers with all of these reports. That would allow you to, let's say that you need to do recognition in your chapter. You can export this and then sort by who has the highest number of referrals or the biggest number of visitors, as well as maybe who has perfect attendance. All good things to recognize at the chapter level. Going down a little further, there's a VP report that shows you your statistics on a weekly basis. And it will show you week by week by week what your statistics are. And again, I don't really have any POMS reports up here in my BER chapter. Why don't I switch to a real area here? And again, the VP report, this will show you week by week on a certain month all of your statistics. So if I look at, let's say, January for my chapter, it would show you 1 week, then another week, then another week, then another week, the final week, and then the totals. Peggy says, if drop members are not showing, is their revenue reported? And the answer to that is yes. So when I going back to this POMS report here, if I include drop members or exclude dropped members, so I'm going to just show you real quick. If I include the dropped members, this will show me all of the members that have been in this chapter for the past 6 months, whether or not they're now currently dropped. But you'll notice that for example, our thank you for closed business is about 2,191,000. So if I close this and I exclude dropped members, this list will be a little shorter for the people that have dropped, but the total still has 2,191,000. So all of these totals, so report totals include the contributions from drop members that were active during the time period. It's just making this list a little bit shorter for individual contributions. So does that make sense, Peggy? Does that answer your question? All right, cool. So, I mean, there's a ton of other reports that I encourage you to poke and play around with. There is the member details reports for doing a gains exchange. There's the chapter traffic lights report. The POMS attendance report is another one of my favorites that gives you a visual representation of people's attendance in the chapter. Now, what I love about this report is that it can show you trends and help you to spot if people are struggling, especially if you see multiple absences in a row. So a lot of people are going to have an absence here, an absence maybe 6 months later. You want to look for people that have a bunch of lates and a bunch of absences, in a row, because that's a red flag. That's a warning sign that maybe something is going on. We have a person that had a couple of absences in a row and then a substitute and then a late and then a couple of absences. We might have been able to catch that because they dropped a couple of weeks later. So again, all things to look for, and there's some great, powerful reports here in BNI Connect. Let's see, we have some questions. I know that some people might need to leave. As I said, I am always happy to stay on these calls as long as you guys have questions. So however long you guys want to hang out, I am here for it. Let's see. Marita, I believe, asks, how do you add, is that the thank you for closed business, I'm assuming? Thank you for closed business for dropped members. Okay, so if I'm submitting slips online in BNI Connect, when I submit a thank you for closed business slip, there is all the way at the bottom, there's 2 lines, BNI and visitor. So BNI is for the alumni, the dropped members, the past members, whatever terminology you're using for that. If it was a past member, I want to make sure I choose the BNI line, or obviously if it was a visitor, choose visitor. It's the same thing if you're using the paper slips. If you're using the paper slips, then on the POMS report itself, all the way at the bottom, there's also a BNI and a visitor line for you to enter that. So does that answer your question, Marita? All right, so Michael says there's a number of things to get members on board with. Do you have a members training video and or is there a phased-in approach to get everyone to transition? Awesome question, Michael, and the answer to that is yes. So if you go to the support site, support.bniconnect.com, again, support.bniconnect.com. I know some of you aren't in BNI Connect, so you can get there without being in BNI Connect. The best way is to click the question mark, but you can go directly there, support.bniconnect.com. Every month, we do an entire series of member training videos because we have new members in BNI all the time. So we start out with step 1, how to complete your profile, and then step 2 is giving and tracking referrals, and then building your global network, which is the social media sessions, then the member tools and reports. So they are welcome to attend these on a monthly basis. We also have, of course, all of the recordings. And then within here, there's individual lessons. So for example, under the chapter operations, there's 28 different articles on all sorts of different things. For example, entering a POMS report, and it gives you the step-by-step instructions and what everything means. So definitely feel free to check those out. Love having people on the webinars, and again, we do repeat the series every month. So does that help, Michael? Is that what you were looking for? And if you are a director consultant or executive director, Michael, feel free to contact me. All of that stuff is also available in a document format that I can give you a PDF of. Okay? All right. Marita, did I already answer this question? If you give business to a drop member, how do you add that? I think I answered that already. Danielle says, if submitting online slips, do you submit them during the stand and deliver portion of your meeting to show the visitors we are a productive chapter? Yes, so I cover this in more detail in the online slips presentation, but you submit your slips on a weekly basis as they happen. When you get to your chapter meeting, you can use this print your weekly slips. The print your weekly slips will allow you to basically print out your referral slips so you can cut those out and hand those in. So you definitely, absolutely at the chapter meeting want to stand up and say, I have a referral for Elliot Granville. I have a referral for Matt Wall. I have a referral for Elizabeth Berman. The rest of the information, you don't need to put a slip in for it. Like with the referral slip, you want to have a door prize. You want to be there for the referral reality check, that type of thing. The rest of the information, the CEUs, the one-to-ones, the visitors, those were already entered into the POMS. Really, the only reason for the slip before was so that the vice president could go back and enter it into the POMS. But we do list the information on the report so you can stand up and say, I had a one-to-one with Barbara, Peter, David. I had CEUs of this amount. I brought this many visitors. So the information is there for you, but you don't necessarily need a slip for that information. Does that make sense? Does that help, Danielle? But yeah, absolutely stand up, talk about that, celebrate that activity. All right, Marita, can you retype your question for me? If I need to, all right, let's say you receive business from a drop member. How do you add to the chapter if I give business to a dropped member? So when you put in business for a dropped member, that will show up in the POMS report. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm not sure what the distinction is that you're making with that, Marita. Can you help me clarify? Peggy says, will contributions from a chapter's director and ambassador ever be displayed separately for members to see? Peggy, at this time, no. One of the reasons for that, and believe me, this is something that is on the list of things that we would love to have in BNI Connect. The reason that we can't right now is just the way that the system was designed. Directors aren't in a chapter. So there's the way that it works is that the POMS report is associated with the membership. Without a membership, then we can't basically record this activity for the director, and they just haven't been able to figure out, or haven't had the money to or time to figure out how exactly to do that. We have slightly worked around that by giving them memberships in our Antarctica region to test with. Someday, when they allow not just cross-chapter but cross-world referrals, we might be able to lift to that barrier and get that allowed so that you can take a look at those contributions individually. But not yet is the answer, unfortunately. All right. Marita says, when I gave business to a dropped member, it showed up as the business being given to me. So you're talking about revenue received to your business, so tracking how much money you made in BNI. Is that what you're referring to? And if so, we do track that information for you. You'll note that the revenue received is not tracked in the POMS report. We respect people's privacy. Not everybody, and believe it or not, very few people want to share how much money they actually make in BNI. However, we will track this for you, but only if you are using the online slips. So with the online slips, whenever you submit a thank you for closed business slip, we will keep track of all of those that you submit and keep a tally for you of revenue received to my business. So these numbers here, this 266,000 and 424,000, those are a accumulation of all of my thank you for closed business slips that I've put in the last 12 months and lifetime. So as far as tracking how much money you give to a drop member, what you could do is when I submit a thank you for closed business slip, I do have the opportunity, so let's say I put it in for the dropped member, put it in for the amount. I can, in the comments, write whatever I want. So I could write, this is for George Smith, dropped member. Nobody has to know what this says. This is private to only you. I could submit this. And then in my notes, when I go back to review my thank you for closed business numbers, this will be part of this report. I can see in the comments, for George Smith. So you wouldn't be able to sort it by the name necessarily, but I could sort it by the name, and all these BNI ones, the dropped members, will be put together, and I can see the individuals listed as part of the comments. Does that explain it? I mean, if you're looking to do individual names for drop members, that's not possible at this time. Carla says, what about referrals to dropped members? Are we able to put it into BNI Connect as a referral? And no, referrals and one-to-ones are only tracked with other active members. Once that other member has left to the chapter, we no longer count that as credit in the POMS report. It is just for active members that we count credit. Does that make sense, Carla? Okay, so Marita says, well, what about revenue that you've generated for members that are no longer members? Is that what you're saying? there would be no way to record that information unless they actually came to your chapter and submitted a slip, and it would have to be a paper slip. But otherwise, there's no way to track that. And again, we're typically not tracking because they've left BNI at that point. So, there's really no facility for them to input a thank you for closed business for you at that point. So, sorry about that, Marita. All right, a couple of people said thank you. They do have to take off. What other questions that you might have? And I should probably just change this leadership team webinar to an hour as opposed to a half hour, because there always seems to be much more to cover on this one than we do with the regular webinars. Questions, comments? You still awake, Tony? Did I miss anything, Steve? All right, well, if there's no additional questions, what I'd like to say is thank you guys so much for being here. Love having you guys on these webinars. Reminder that the new webinar series will be posted very soon. I'm hoping to crank that out tomorrow, have it up on all the regional websites, have it up on the support site. Also, all the recordings are going to be on YouTube as well as the support site. And finally, I would love it if you gave us a like on Facebook. This is the YouTube, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. We do webinar announcements, tips, tricks, reminders, etc. And of course, if you enjoyed this material, a good referral for me is to please let other people know about these webinars. And for you directors out there, a testimonial to headquarters is always appreciated. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and happy connecting.